I knew from the beginning in terms of how, at that time in that generation, how I was being asked or what I was being asked to do seemed to equate itself with what women were supposed to do.
I remember reading one of those national reports on the economic status of women that crossed my desk when I was at Vermont Works for Women, and the news was grim. Things hadn't budged in decades. Women were still struggling economically at much higher rates than men. Occupational segregation was as prevalent as ever, and the wage gap persisted. But I really didn't know what more we could do as one little organization to change things. That reinforced for me personally the importance of raising these issues statewide and trying to find partners in moving the agenda forward so that maybe together we could do something more than we could each do on our own.
She said, "I'm tired of putting Band-Aids on things. I want to work for systemic change. This would require more partners, more time, and more money than the Women's Fund had ever contemplated. It was to be a collaboration among the Vermont Commission on Women with its state policy expertise, Vermont Works for Women with its programming expertise, and the Women's Fund with its philanthropic know-how. From the outset, it was meant to be time limited because the goal was to get other institutions to adopt and carry forward its agenda for gender equity. The Women's Fund Council loved the model and its potential for greater impact, and we knew that TIFF was the person to lead it. We committed half of our budget for 3 years and made it renewable. It was a bold move, and now, 6 years later, we can say it was the right move.
We knew there was a lot we didn't know about the economic well-being of women or women's economic potential, and we'd all been frustrated with trying to get good local data. In some cases, the state collected data on, for example, the number of people who participated in state-supported job training programs, but they didn't disaggregate it by gender or by race. In other cases, they just didn't collect data at all. So we brought in researchers and statisticians to really dig into census data and small business administration data and glean what they could about how many Vermont women live in poverty and what their family makeup is, for example, occupational segregation or gendered career clustering in various fields, the wealth and wage gap in our state. And then subsequent reports looked at women's business ownership and leadership in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. In the last of the CTS reports, which we released in December 2019, we updated our Women, Work, and Wages report, and we expanded our analysis to include the implicit biases that undergird our economic systems, and also the intersecting impacts of race, disability, sexual orientation. And we also made concrete recommendations for how we might, as a broader community, start shifting some of these inequities.
I figured that the work we needed to do as an initiative would be obvious once we'd done the reports. I knew the process of Change the Story was going to be iterative and it had to be organic. We knew we needed to engage people. Our job was to figure out how to leverage the energy and input of the networks of others. So the process of raising awareness and catalyzing change could take on a ripple effect, reaching rings of stakeholders, each taking up the charge in their own way. A Business Peer Exchange, a project we launched in 2016, brought together leaders from different industries once a month over the course of a year to discuss what they were struggling with, to learn best practices and develop new skills for improving gender equity in their workplace.
Honestly, I think about and reference Business Peer Exchange on a regular basis. It's often in the seemingly small things that we learned that I know make the biggest impact in my daily life. It's things like when I'm hosting a meeting, I make sure to invite everyone to speak in, especially the quiet ones. When I'm organizing a brainstorming session, I really try to be hyper aware and give credit where credit is due, specifically to women. And when I was asked to be on a DEI committee at work, I reminded everyone that we will never have true diversity and equity without inclusion.
Employers have the ability to make immediate changes in their organizations that can impact the people who work for them, their employees' families, and their communities. By promoting conversations and connections among people, whether they work together, go to school together, or have just met, Change the Story has been able to both share the data in our reports and to get people thinking and talking about the role gender plays in their work, school, and home lives. We have also been able to use tools like the Business Peer Exchange and our Let's Talk Gender and Let's Talk Harassment conversation cards to develop new champions of gender equity.
Change the Story has been a groundbreaking effort. One of their initiatives is the Male Champions for Change, a group that I am really proud to be part of. They brought the male champs together once a month to talk about how we can help assist the efforts to achieve gender equity in Vermont. One of the great events that Change the Story had was what they called the Breakfast of Champions. It was an event at the University of Vermont with this wonderful speaker, Ted Bunch. Nearly 600 people were in the room. And when you looked out across the room, you saw all these male faces. So many men were there participating in a conversation about gender equity.
The Champions for Change were particularly interested in working with employers on pay equity, which jibed nicely with the form and function of our Business Peer Exchange. In 2020, we launched a cohort of 7 Vermont employers who were committed to leading on these issues, and we called it Leaders for Equity and Equal Pay, or LEAP. Our partners from Sadowski Consulting Services developed a one-of-a-kind tool for small to mid-size employers to run in-house race and gender pay reviews. The LEAP toolkit, including a companion 60-page pay equity playbook and all the resources you need to track compensation in your workplace, is available for free on all the Change the Story partner websites.
The toolkit and the playbook, to me, potentially can put Vermont as the national leader on eliminating gender and racial wage gaps. And I say that being fiercely proud of what we're doing in Massachusetts to be that same leader. So this has enormous potential.
Our work would never have been possible without the vision and continued support of the Vermont Women's Fund. We had a very unusual opportunity. What little startup grantee gets that kind of freedom from a foundation? The Women's Fund had the trust in us to make an investment, not knowing exactly where it was going to go. And that's one of the biggest lessons, I think, of Change the Story for philanthropy. Allow something to evolve and invest enough so that it can be successful.
Change the Story really elevated the way we thought about our philanthropy. Prior to that, we'd always given individual grants to nonprofits across the state, but we had never looked holistically. And that's what Change the Story helped us do, make social change. It was exciting and it was liberating, and it gave us a whole new lens in which to approach this issue of gender equity. And the Change the Story team was able to inspire others, even those who didn't know that they were philanthropists.
Change the Story support was absolutely vital to the Burlington High School girls soccer team's equal pay campaign. I had definitely never thought of myself as an activist before that experience. And so because of that, this campaign that we were spearheading was both incredibly exciting and absolutely terrifying. But Jessica and Al were crucial in guiding us through the process. They were also amazing at helping us to find strategies to continue the campaign long beyond just the fall of 2019, and helped us to create the Equal Pay Fund.
It became clear right from the beginning, as we developed the first report, that there were lots and lots of gaps in the data. No one had an answer for us about how to paint a picture beyond the average Vermont woman, which for all intents and purposes means a white, professional, able-bodied, straight woman. We developed a habit of apologizing for that and blamed the data that was accessible to us. We didn't have the money to develop our own data. And that said, we could have been much more explicit and pressed state agencies to develop data about women of color and women with disabilities. There's a growing consciousness generally about how the women's movement has left a lot of people out by focusing on expanding the horizons for professional women rather than on economic justice.
We're not talking about queer women. We're not talking about trans women. We're not talking, about Black women. And that's the inherent problem, is that you need to expand. First of all, you need to expand the idea of what a woman is so that you can be able to defend more women.
The gap in data became intolerable, and we knew we had work to do as feminists to explore what we weren't seeing. In partnership with the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, we formed a racial equity learning community in 2019 to learn together how to be co-conspirators in dismantling white supremacy culture. The work has since evolved into a collaboration with 7 organizations around the state to develop a new conversation card deck focused on race and intersectionality.
I'd attended a Let's Talk gender training before while I was an Eco-AmeriCorps member. I still have my deck. My proposal came honestly from a cry for help. Reason why I picked up the Let's Talk gender deck is because it helped me understand gender equity pretty well. So I thought a reframed conversation about race, intersectionality, and identity would be helpful. My gratitude to Change the Story is boundless because of their hearing of my story and validating the idea that this conversation needs to be had and breathing life into a collaborative space filled with incredible people from all across Vermont.
And what you learn isn't always what you think you're going to learn. Clearly, there are many ways to tell the story. Our data reports needed to evolve and expand to encompass all those ways. And so the work of building our partnership also expanded, and the relationships we built were deepened and the impact amplified.
The 5 CTS reports really proved to be just invaluable assets in both raising the awareness of some of the problems we face in our state, and also in giving lawmakers and state leaders the information they need to create more just and equitable policy. The Commission will continue to update and produce CTS reports so we can continue to know where we are.
Vermont Works for Women continues to offer gender equity consultation and workshops to employers and schools to support them in successfully recruiting and retaining gender diverse employees and students, and to work to create inclusive, supportive, and safe spaces for work and learning. We have also recently launched our Gender Equity Advancement Roundtable, or GEAR program, which brings together businesses, nonprofits, and schools 4 times throughout the year to learn, network, and receive resources and support to advance their gender equity efforts across our state.
Change the Story has given us the opportunity to grow as a fund and to continue that big picture thinking. We launched a new initiative just this past year called This Way Up, There's Power in Our Numbers. And what This Way Up is about is filling in missing data. No one knows how many women business owners there are in the state of Vermont. That initiative would have never happened had it not been our work with Change the Story and seeing how you have to think big. You have to push the envelope. You have to ask questions. Otherwise, there's a lot of data and activity that's invisible when it comes to women.
The Change the Story initiative has come to an end, but the work continues as an expansive and ongoing collaboration. It's an effort that we all must support, the organizations that will now carry on this work, as well as a wide network of stakeholders who are committed to gender equity.
We have more and more people at the table, and we want all of them. And we invite all of you to come help make change on behalf of Vermont's women and girls and all of our Vermont communities.